Welcome into CBS News 24/7. I'm Elizabeth Cook. The market's reacting after President Donald Trump threatens more tariffs against the EU and Apple. And this time, iPhones are being targeted. What President Trump is saying about his conversations with Apple CEO Tim Cook. And a new ruling in the tug of war between the White House and our nation's oldest university. What a judge just ordered after the Trump administration told Harvard it can't enroll foreign students anymore. And CBS News teams are on the ground in San Diego, where investigators are trying to figure out why a small plane smashed into a neighborhood.
This was a disaster scene out of a movie, but playing out in real life, real time.
And Hollywood spy techniques aren't exactly fiction. The former CIA chief of disguise shares how agents use masks and how she actually used one to fool a former president. It's a great one. You got to stick around for that. But right now, our feed's keeping a close eye on the White House, where President Trump is gearing up to sign a new set of executive orders. We'll keep you updated on that. But first, a live look at how the markets are reacting at this hour. Right now, you see the Dow is down almost 260 points. And what you see on your screen here is likely a direct response to this. This is the latest tariff threat from President Trump. Today's target, your iPhone, and specifically Apple CEO Tim Cook. He says, quote, "I expect their iPhones sold in the United States to be manufactured and built in the United States, not India or anyplace else." Adding, if that is not the case, a tariff of at least 25% must be paid by Apple to the U.S. Now, here's how this could impact your wallet. Wall Street analysts warn that moving production of Apple products into the U.S. could actually add hundreds of dollars to the cost of these devices. So let's bring in CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi. Olivia, we're learning that the president and Tim Cook actually met face-to-face on Wednesday. So how does that meeting play into this announcement today?
Well, Liz, just reading the tea leaves, it seems that meeting that CBS News confirmed happened at the White House between the president and the CEO of Apple certainly had some impact on the announcement today and Trump's reaction on Truth Social. As you mentioned in that Truth Social post, he said he informed Tim Cook that I expect their iPhones will be sold in the United States, that they will be manufactured and built in the U.S. as well, not India or anyplace else. And if it's not the case, a 25% tariff must be paid on Apple products in the U.S. Now, just to broaden this out, the Apple back in 2017 during the first Trump administration throughout 2019, 2020 had actually shifted a lot of their manufacturing from China to India to be in compliance with a lot of Trump's tariffs that he had put on China during his first administration. And we all remember that first trade war with China. As a result, they specifically moved their products there, one, so they can still make them cheaply, but two, to be in compliance with the White House. Trump now says that he would like to see iPhones built here in the United States, but the whole point underscoring the price of these iPhones, which are still expensive for Americans. But if they're made here in the U.S., those prices will certainly skyrocket. And Apple, of course, is one of the most successful American companies in history. And of course, this is having some impact on the markets today, as Apple is often a big part of retirement accounts because they have been so successful for the many decades that they have been operating. So this is a story we're going to have to watch very closely because it could continue to impact the market.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the shift in relationship between Tim Cook and President Donald Trump. We saw Cook was at the inauguration. The two have had cordial relationships before. But back in April, President Trump also said that tariffs on high-tech products like iPhones would be exempt. So why the sudden change here? Do we know?
Well, it's a good question. I think it's important to look at the entire economic sphere right now around the globe and how the U.S. is working with countries to try to reach a deal. Of course, there was that conversation with China to try to reach a deal with them on their exports, with the European Union, and of course, Trump expressing frustration at them as well this morning. It was also quite notable, Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, was on Fox News this morning, where he was asked specifically about this, and he said part of the reason why Trump is issuing this threat to Apple in specific is because they want to bring back precision manufacturing manufacturing to the U.S. He went on to say that I think one of our greatest vulnerabilities is the external production of semiconductors. And that's particularly something that has been a concern not only of the Trump administration, but of the previous administrations as well. The Biden administration went to great lengths to move chip production from China and Taiwan to here in the United States, worried about that supply chain. That has continued to be a vulnerable thing for the United States and for national security more broadly than just personal technology. So that's part of the reason they say. But again, this has been a long-standing issue before even this administration. So the fact that Trump said they'll be exempt in April, but today they won't be, and the Secretary of Besson is pointing to the chip manufacturing. It all still doesn't quite add up to why now all of a sudden Apple is within Trump's sights about moving their manufacturing back here.
And Olivia, it's worth noting this wasn't the only tariff announcement the president made this morning. What else did he say?
Well, I mentioned briefly that European Union announcement. We can dive into that. The president also taking aim at them this morning, saying they have been very difficult to deal with, saying their discussions, the U.S. discussions with them are going nowhere, and therefore he's recommending a straight 50% tariff on the European Union starting June 1st. This is a frustration that Trump is expressing with the European Union because there has only been one trade deal that the president has been able to secure since he pushed off those Liberation Day tariffs. Remember, he put that 90-day pause on those reciprocal tariffs on all countries in order to make a deal. Well, that has been pretty stagnant. He has not been able to make a deal with anyone beyond the United Kingdom, who the U.S. actually has a trade surplus with. So the president taking aim at the European Union today, they say that this is in order to light a fire under them to get past, to get a deal passed before that July 9th deadline when those reciprocal tariffs are set to go back into effect. But Liz, as you and I have talked about before, you can make these trade deals, but they take a lot of negotiating, a lot of effort, and you can get paper deals, but it takes years for them to be enacted or to be entirely hammered out, months at the very least. So to get all of this done in 90 days was, to begin with, a tall task, but the president expressing a little bit of frustration that there hasn't been more movement on that specifically with our European trading partners.
All right, Olivia Rinaldi live for us in Washington. Have a great weekend, Olivia. Thanks so much. All right, I want to bring in Medora Lee, money and personal finance reporter with USA Today. Medora, thanks for being with us. How is the financial world reacting to these back-to-back social media posts from the president? It's having a huge impact on the markets.
It is. I mean, the markets dropped, stocks dropped immediately after these social media posts from Trump. But at the same time, if you look at it, we're not seeing those 1,000-point drops that we originally saw back when all of this kind of back and forth started. So I'm not sure if it's because the markets have become more immune to this kind of these crazy statements that come out on social media every once in a while with not a lot of detail. But I know for sure that people think that this is just adding more volatility to the market. We had seen a little calm period, and now that's kind of disrupted.
I know a lot of folks who use a lot of different Apple products. I'm concerned, how long would it take for consumers who are looking to get that latest iPhone, usually around the fall time before the holidays, to see that difference on their price tag? Yeah, I mean, it's the timing is a little difficult because Trump didn't offer very many details as to when this new 25% tariff might go into effect, and if it's on top of other tariffs that he may be imposing. So we're not really sure when the timing is. It's just that we know that if Apple is starting to run out of inventory of its iPhones that were assembled before the tariffs go into effect, they might start looking at raising prices. But usually the entire tariff is not passed on to the consumer. Apple will probably try to absorb some of it if there is a new tariff on them. And they can try to boost revenue from other things like their services to kind of get through it. But we'll have to see what happens. And what about the potential of 50% tariffs on the EU? How are economists reacting to that possibility? So far, from what I've heard and seen, the economists have been fairly calm. They have been through this before. They think that the 50% tariff might be a negotiating tactic, Trump's favorite thing, a lot of threats, and then they try to negotiate a deal and soften it. I think that most economists do not believe that the tariff will be 50%, but
the big question is, where will they land? Will they land 10%, 20%, 30%? Maybe we could absorb 10%, maybe 20%, but then, then we start to really think about how much this could slow our economy and how much this could be inflationary for us. And so that's another concern.
Medora Lee, thank you so much for being with us. Well, we are keeping our eyes on the biggest stories happening across the country right now. Just take a look at our monitors behind me right here on CBS News 24/7. Coming up, we're going to take you to Washington, D.C., where there is a vigil for the Israeli embassy employees who were murdered in front of the Capitol Jewish Museum. The suspect now faces the death penalty. We're live at our nation's capital when we come back. The suspect in the shooting deaths of 2 Israeli embassy aides could face the death penalty in what authorities say was a targeted attack. The 2 victims were remembered at vigils last night in Washington and in Kansas. And in her memory, a friend and former roommate of 26-year-old Sarah Milgram had this to say.
Something I think Sarah would want me to say is, please strive to learn as much as you can. Educate yourself as much as possible so that you can advocate for others in need.
Now, Milgram was known for working to bridge the divide between the Israelis and Palestinians, and she met Yaron Lashinsky working at the embassy there. He was expected to propose next week.
He was just a prince of a human being, very unassuming, very intelligent.
And now the families are planning funerals. The suspect is 31-year-old Elias Rodriguez, seen here. He is charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, and if convicted, he could face the death penalty. CBS News Justice reporter Jake Rosen is live for us now. Jake, the death penalty headline attached to the suspect's name. What do you know about that?
Well, that's right. In 3 charges that were brought against Rodriguez, the death penalty is possible. There are 2 counts of first-degree murder against the alleged shooter, and there's also a charge for murder of an official, of a foreign official, which was tacked on, obviously, as you just said. These 2 young people worked at the Israeli embassy, and thus that charge would count. It's very rarely used, in addition to some firearm charges. But Pam Bondi and the Trump administration rolled back protections and a rule in place during the Biden administration that basically was a brief moratorium on the U.S. using the death penalty at a federal level. It's certainly possible that if convicted, that a jury here in Washington, D.C. could seek and confirm the death penalty. We already know that the Attorney General Pam Bondi and prosecutors in New York have said that their intention for at least the United Healthcare killer, alleged killer, Luigi Mangione, that is already in play there. Certainly will be more to come as these court proceedings play out. The next hearing in this case will be next month.
Yeah, and Jake, the FBI investigating this case as a hate crime and terrorism. So what evidence points to those charges?
Well, there's a couple of things. The premeditation is one big one. We know, according to an FBI affidavit, that Rodriguez flew a 9mm handgun with him as he flew from Chicago, where he lived, to Washington, D.C. in the D.C. area. We know that he bought a ticket to the museum at the Capitol Jewish Museum so that he could potentially get inside. And the big thing that prosecutors will have to convince any jury of and will have to prove to a grand jury if they bring these charges is the online writings that this man allegedly made. A lot of them were targeted at Jewish people, calling for the death of Jewish people on posts on X. In addition to that, there was 7 screenshots worth of final writings of this man that he published, in which he said there was a deliberate need to be violent, and that nonviolent protests, of which we've seen tens and thousands of people across the world participate in almost daily these days about what's going on in Gaza right now. He said that that was not doing enough and something had to be done in a directed manner at somebody to be held responsible for this. Again, that's what we know for now, although certainly more charges are very likely against Rodriguez as these proceedings play out.
And Jake, we know there is tremendous fear and concern, not only among authorities, but also the Jewish community, that anti-Semitic hate crimes are on the rise in this country. So what's being done about that?
Well, that's right. And we know that this has been a really top priority of the Trump administration and was one during the Trump campaign, in which President Trump attempted to paint Democrats, and Democrats specifically in Congress and the Biden and Harris administration, as pro-Hamas, or at least not sympathetic enough to the ongoing Israeli side of the Israel and Gaza conflict. The ADL, which you can see on your screen, said that they've seen a sharp uptick in the last year of anti-Semitic incidents around the country, including a 5% increase. In addition to that, there's just the anecdotal evidence, which is what the Trump administration has pointed to mostly, specifically in this case, right, where somebody was willing to go across the country to a Jewish-oriented event to deliberately target anybody, as we saw, at least according to these FBI evidence. This was not specifically targeted to this couple. It was simply anybody who was at that event. So we know, obviously, this has been a big priority by the White House, and we'll see whether it's the death penalty or these terrorism charges, how the administration specifically will go after actual criminal actions that can be proven in court about what to do about these alleged anti-Semitic incidents.
Jake Rosen, live for us in Washington. Thank you so much for that report. Let's take you to San Diego now, where investigators are combing through the wreckage left behind after a small plane literally crashed into an entire neighborhood. At least 3 people were killed, and even though that plane plunged into that house you see there, nobody that was actually on the ground died. And the big question now is why the plane went down in the first place. CBS News national correspondent Carter Evans is at the scene with the very latest on the investigation.
Well, investigators are now back on the scene for a second day, and this is when the NTSB team is going to come in and really take a good look at the scene here. They're going to put drones up in the air. They're going to map out everything of this accident scene. They're going to look at all the parts of the airplane and try and determine exactly what happened. We do know that it was very foggy when that plane was coming in, and they talked to the tower about the weather conditions, but they didn't seem to show too much concern, or at least the pilot didn't seem to show too much concern at the time. The theory right now is that they clipped a power line actually coming in here on approach to the airport, hit a light pole, the plane kind of broke apart, hit the ground here, and this house took the main impact. That truck was actually parked out on the street here, and it was pushed into the living room of that home. Amazingly, no one in that home was hurt. Everyone got out alive. In fact, everyone in this neighborhood got out alive. Can't say as much for the people aboard the plane. There are 6 people that were on that plane. They are all presumed dead at this point. So what happens from here? So the investigation continues here with the NTSB today. They will hopefully clear the scene, and that means tomorrow, Saturday, the recovery operation can begin. They'll start cleaning up the neighborhood here. They'll take the plane to a secure location to continue the investigation. And hopefully, some people will be able to begin moving back into their homes this weekend. Back to you.
Carter, thanks so much. Now, this was the scene that first responders were confronted with when they arrived early yesterday morning. Just a line of burning cars and playing cards literally littering the street there. Now, 2 firefighters who were among the first to arrive spoke to CBS affiliate KFMB about what that was like.
The other evening, we went to sleep like we do at most of our fire stations, and we were extremely asleep, and then we were thrust into an extremely horrible situation. And on our way here, a lot of things were going through our minds. This was a disaster scene out of a movie, but playing out in real life, real time.
This was also pretty incredible. In the immediate aftermath of that crash, we showed you footage of the Humane Society cleaning off animals that were covered in jet fuel. And today we're getting a closer look at some body cam video showing people at the scene rushing in to help those animals. Take a look.
You're okay. I know. Hi, sweetie.
Those dogs, I'm sure, although scared, appreciated the help there. Workers with the Humane Society scoured the scene to find and return any and every pet to their families after they got left behind when that plane initially crashed. They said in total they took in 8 dogs exposed to that jet fuel. All right, our monitor is swinging over to Harvard University, where a federal judge just blocked a Trump administration plan to prevent certain students from attending one of the top universities in the world. We're going to break down that case when we come back. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Welcome back to CBS News 24/7. In a small town in Mississippi, an hour outside of New Orleans, they are struggling to rebuild more than 2 months after tornadoes just ripped through the state there. 18 twisters hit Mississippi mid-March, killing 7 people and damaging hundreds of homes. But since then, the state has not received any federal disaster aid, and Mississippi isn't alone. CBS News national correspondent Dave Malkoff shows us the damage in Tylertown and what the White House is saying about the holdup.
Across the country, governors have 21 disaster requests into the White House. The president has to sign that. 2 have been denied. The other 19, they are still waiting for that signature, including right here in Tylertown, Mississippi. See this? This is the remains of a big, sturdy brick building that was on the property of this family. They have built up for 56 years. A lot of their property was taken down, including their house, and they got that back up and running because they were able to use insurance money and a big chunk of their life savings. Nothing from FEMA. The last time they've heard from FEMA was when they applied shortly after the tornado that was in March. And that's what a lot of people have been telling us. We've talked to at least a dozen people here in Tylertown who have the exact same scenario. They went and they talked to FEMA, and that's the last they've heard from it. So the problem is the president has to sign this signature, right? So what is the holdup? We asked the White House that very question, and we got an answer late yesterday. They told us President Trump looks at each and every one of these disaster declarations, the requests that come in, but he is also leaning heavily on the states to take care of their own people. Back to you.
Dave, thank you so much for that report. Meanwhile, a federal judge has blocked the Trump administration's ban on the enrollment of foreign students at Harvard University. But the order telling students to transfer to schools or lose their visas sent a wave of panic amongst its international students, as you can imagine. Here's what they're saying.
Just imagining being an incoming freshman right now. You got that decision about a month ago that you got admitted to this place, and now you're seeing the news and what is happening, and you might not even be able to come. It must be just heartbreaking.
So basically, it's a mixture of like shock, then to kind of just devastation, like frustration, and then uncertainty, anxiety. It's a combination of all of those feelings, I would say, among students in the community right now.
All right, for more on this, let's go live to CBS News Boston's Christina Rex, who's outside Harvard University. Christina, a hearing will be held next week on the enrollment ban, but still plenty of concern at that Ivy League school. What are you hearing today?
Yeah, Liz, I think uncertainty really is the word. I just spoke to a graduate student from Korea. She's graduating from the School of Education, and she told me that she had planned on going into the U.S. public education system and staying here, but now she feels like she's not wanted or not welcomed in this country, and she's considering going back home instead of starting her career here in the U.S. I also spoke to other seniors since it's senior week here on campus, and they say there's just been a somber and uncertain mood around many of the events happening on campus this week.
And Christina, if this ban is successful, it would mean the loss of more than a quarter of Harvard's student body. So that's got to have an impact on the university as a whole, right?
Oh, there's absolutely a huge impact. We're talking about around 6,800 international students who go to school here. That's more than 27% of the student body population here at Harvard. And of course, we're not only talking about current international students, but there's also any incoming students who had accepted offer letters to come here to Harvard who now might feel uncertain about whether or not that's really going to happen.
And Harvard is saying this all comes down to free speech, plain and simple. Is this having an effect on student expression on campus?
Official classes are over. So right now it's just seniors and graduate students on campus during senior week. So it's already a different environment on campus. But I'll tell you, we were on campus for a while trying to get interviews, trying to talk to students. And many students, including international students, were a bit fearful about going on camera, about putting their name or their faces out there because they're worried about what their future will be here at the school as well as here in the U.S. And like I mentioned earlier, seniors just tell me there really is kind of a somber and an uncertain mood around many of the events happening on campus this week, Liz.
So unusual for that area this time of year with all the graduations. It usually is such a time of joy and anticipation. Christina Rex, thank you so much.
Hey, Mommy.
A Georgia teen is reunited with her family after nearly 3 weeks in ICE custody. 19-year-old Ramina Arias Cristobal was released after an immigration judge granted her bond. She was picked up by loved ones at an ICE facility in Lumpkin, Georgia. That's about 200 miles south from where she was actually arrested. And the teen was stopped by a police officer earlier this month and arrested for allegedly making an improper turn. But the officer discovered that she was undocumented and was driving without a license. And here's that arrest.
Have you ever been to jail?
No, sir.
Oh, you're going.
I cannot go to jail. I have my finals next week, and my family really depends on this.
The teen was actually taken to the same ICE facility where her father was being held. He was also arrested during a traffic stop back in April. They have both since been released, and the traffic charges against her have since been dismissed.
I'm very happy and very blessed to be back with my family. Gracias. Tengan buena noche.
Buenas noches. Éxito en tu vida.
Gracias.
And this was sweet. The teen's friends decorated her bedroom with all of her favorite things ahead of her homecoming there. But ICE is still working to deport her. The Department of Homeland Security says she and her father should face consequences for being in the U.S. illegally. Meantime, a reporter with CBS News Miami rode along with ICE agents as they captured a double murder suspect. Here's Lauren Pastrana.
CBS News Miami is about to get the exclusive opportunity to ride along with ICE fugitive operations. This is what these ICE officers do day in and day out, and our cameras are going to go along.
He's a foreign fugitive wanted for double murder out of Venezuela. The other male, the friend that was helping with the car issues, we're going to try to arrest him too. We're going to try to get a 2-for-1. Anything else? All right, let's roll out.
And with that, these officers gear up and hit the road. ICE Assistant Field Office Director Mitchell Diaz says they're simply doing what they've always done.
This is what we do every day. There's no change from this current administration or the prior administration or any other administration beforehand.
What do you think is the biggest misconception about what ICE does?
It's just not random. It's just not that they're going out in the streets and picking up just any individual. Most of the enforcement action is targeted. We know who we want and who we're going after. It's long-term investigations that we do.
Today, their investigation led them to this apartment building in Broward.
Looks like the target is going to the passenger door.
Prior surveillance suggested the target would head to work around 1 p.m. By 1:50, they had their guy. ICE asked us not to report his name or show his face as the case is still pending, but they tell us this man in his late 20s is wanted for 2 counts of first-degree murder, organized crime, and aggravated assault in his home country of Venezuela.
So after about almost 2 hours of waiting for the target to come outside, the entire arrest happened in just under 10 minutes. Do you get nervous going out on these each day because you never know what, will meet you on the other side?
Yes, I mean, there is always a nerve, officer safety aspect of it. This is like every law enforcement agency. These are brave men that are going out every day to ensure that not only national security, but the community and the public is safe from these individuals.
ICE recently touted the arrest of more than 1,100 undocumented immigrants in just 1 week in Florida. Operation Tidal Wave, they called it. But Diaz says his officers are not out conducting raids.
These are targeted enforcement actions. Raids are different. Raids could be based on employment inspections, just to ensure that the employer is following U.S. laws and immigration laws. A lot of these individuals that may be part of a raid may be working with fraudulent documents, social security numbers, and fraudulent employment cards. So that raids are completely different than what ICE does as to the fugitive operations.
During CBS Miami's ride-along, officers also arrested a second person who admitted to being in the country illegally. After the arrest, the team headed back to Miramar, where the men were fingerprinted to see if they pop up in any law enforcement databases. Typically, if ICE arrests someone who has a final order of removal or who re-entered the U.S. illegally after being previously deported, they're subject to immediate removal from the country. Others await due process. As for today's target,
they're to face justice at the country in which they committed the crime, where the warrant is from.
Once they're booked and processed, they'll be taken to an ICE detention facility and should go before an immigration judge in the next couple of days. In Miramar, Lauren Pastrana, CBS News, Miami.
All right, right here on CBS News 24/7, we're bringing you the breaking news that's happening across the country right now. Take a look at these monitors from all of our affiliates across the U.S. And coming up, we're going to take you to one of the nation's busiest airports to see how holiday weekend travelers are feeling these days, given the recent incidents involving airplanes. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Memorial Day weekend is finally here, and that means a spike in folks on the road and in the skies. In fact, AAA says it expects a record 45.1 million Americans to travel this weekend, and the vast majority will be driving. But TSA says airports are also going to be really busy. Let's go over to Houston Hobby Airport and CBS News reporter Karen Hua. Karen, great to see you. So are travelers expressing any kind of worry or concern about the recent airport issues like at Newark, or are they just excited to be, you know what, we're off work, it's a long weekend, it'll be fine?
Hey, Liz. Yeah, well, howdy from Houston Airport here. We talked to some travelers on and off today, and they say they have, of course, been aware of these headlines about plane malfunctions, understaffing issues, other related problems, but they say sometimes flying is just the most efficient way to get somewhere, so they're going to keep on doing it and really just hope for the best. As for those understaffing issues, there have been some of those understaffing issues at air traffic control centers here in Texas. We know earlier this week in Austin, there were some of those issues that grounded flights and delayed other flights as well.
So give us an idea of the numbers. I mean, how many people is TSA expecting across the U.S. and then in Texas where you are this weekend?
Yeah, Liz, so yesterday across the country, TSA saw nearly 3 million people. That is the fourth highest number on record. So definitely a lot of people flying, but also on the other hand, as you mentioned earlier, the majority of people are going to be driving. 87% of people are choosing to drive according to AAA. The benefit for them is that gas is about 40 cents cheaper per gallon this year compared to last year. Overall, though, AAA expects about 45.1 million people to be traveling overall through all modes of transportation across this 5-day holiday weekend. It started yesterday. It goes through Monday. That's about 1.4 million people more than they saw last Memorial Day weekend. Liz.
Wow, a lot of people. All right, Karen Hua, thanks so much, live for us in Houston. All right, coming up, you've seen it in the movies like Mission Impossible, where a spy with the help of Hollywood magic is able to conceal their identity. But have you ever wondered how the real-life spies do it when they're out in the field? Well, coming up, a CIA agent shows us the hyper-realistic masks that they're actually using. It's an amazing story. And we have a quick programming note. Our political show is getting a new look and a new name. Next Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, stream the premiere of The Takeout with Major Garrett. He's taking the weekly podcast he hosted for 8 years to 5 nights a week right here on CBS News 24/7. And also next Tuesday, pretty big day, we're launching a new show called 24/7 Primetime, where I'm going to bring you all the best of the things CBS News. We'll deliver you the news you need to know, major national, international headlines, and also breakthroughs in tech and AI, and of course the biggest headlines in the sports world. You can start watching on Tuesday from 7:30 to 9 Eastern Time, streaming on CBS News, the app there, and cbsnews.com. Can't wait. An underground rescue mission underway at a South African gold mine. Nearly 300 mine workers are trapped underground about 40 miles west of Johannesburg. The South African mining company says the workers are alive and accounted for and are gathered at an assembly point while rescuers work to get them out. No word on how they got stuck in the first place. North Korea looking to arrest those responsible for the failed launch of its second naval destroyer. Satellite pictures show the vessel lying on its side and draped in blue covers with parts of it submerged. Leader Kim Jong-un reportedly furious over this, calling this, quote, criminal negligence. And after a month-long trial, we'll soon know the fate of the 10 people accused of robbing Kim Kardashian back in 2016 during Paris Fashion Week. The accused robbers allegedly bound Ms. Kardashian with zip ties and duct tape and locked her in the bathroom while they searched for jewelry. The final session of the trial wrapped up today, and the jury is now considering its verdict. Well, Suni Williams spent a lot of time on the International Space Station, and she got home about 2 months ago after an 8-day trip to space lasted over 9 months due to some technical issues. But recently, the NASA astronaut landed in Massachusetts to speak to graduating students. CBS News Boston's Mike Sullivan reports Williams inspired everyone with stories that are literally out of this world.
If graduation is an entry into the real world, you may want to learn from someone who just entered that atmosphere. Astronaut Suni Williams just so happens to be an expert on the topic.
Oh, boy. I'm much more comfortable on a spacecraft.
She just landed on Earth less than a month ago.
I wish everybody had the opportunity to take the view, get a lap around the planet and take a view.
She expected to be up there for 8 days. Instead, was stuck there for 9 months. It's there she learned a lesson, one she is imparting on graduates of Merrimack College as their commencement speaker. That lesson is to pivot.
Yes, we could have worried about getting home for those 9 months, but instead, we had time to look at the foliage.
They stopped, took a moment to see auroras and 2 comets.
Unbelievable things if you just stop for a moment and look out the window.
After 18 months of waiting, on March 18th, her return pod splashed into the ocean. She became a celebrity.
That's a little bizarre, a little weird.
A career that now includes an honorary degree from Merrimack. And a chance to return to a normal life.
Just chill out and be with family. I think that's number one. Number two is, giving back the things that I've learned, and we try to offer our expertise and experience to them to make sure that they're ready to go.
That way they too can reach for the stars. In North Andover, I'm Mike Sullivan, WBZ News.
Jana Mendez, the former chief of disguise at the CIA, revealed to CBS Mornings how the agency used hyper-realistic masks to help operatives go undercover. CBS News confirmed posted that video on social media here. Let's pull up the TikTok tube.
How lifelike realistic are the masks? If you were in the room with this person wearing the mask, would you notice that it's a mask?
You would not notice unless you told a really hysterical joke and the person couldn't laugh hysterically. It had limits. It could smile, couldn't laugh hysterically. I wore those masks in a couple of pretty tight situations, and no one knew until I announced it.
Jana, is it right that you wore that in front of George H.W. Bush, and could he tell?
I did wear it. Brent Scowcroft was in the room, Bob Gates, John Sununu. No one else had any idea until I took it off.
No idea. I had no idea.
So you did it just to show them that this was possible, is that right?
Absolutely. I wanted the president to see that we had taken disguise to a really dramatically new level.
Did you take one home as a souvenir? Are you in that? Is that you? Are you in there? Is that you in the mask?
This is just me. And in the image, yeah, that's me. Taken off my head.
What?
And John Sununu had not been listening. He'd been working on his own notes. So he just glanced up when I did that, and he let out this funny little noise, like not a shriek, somewhere between a shriek and a squeak.
A shriek and a squeak. No kidding. I mean, it's really cool, but also like a little creepy. I love watching that. Our social media team has more great content like this on TikTok and Instagram, so please follow us at the handle CBS News and CBS News Confirmed. And check out this view of thunderstorms from space. Astronaut Annie McClain, an Army colonel and helicopter pilot, posted this video on social media from the International Space Station. She says she was astounded to see the scale of thunderstorms over the southern and eastern parts of the U.S. She said it looked like some of the flashes looked like they were as large as some cities. That is wild. McClain recently took part in her 3rd spacewalk, by the way. So let's bring in Jessica Birch to talk about what's going on actually on the ground weather-wise. And it seems like so many states have, it's either been thunderstorms or tornadoes. It's not really a typical Memorial Day weekend, right?
No, it's not. But, we kicked off this week with a lot of devastation over into areas like Kentucky and Tennessee. And we're still thinking about them right now as they're dealing with the recovery from those major storms. But we're not done just yet. We have another storm system that's starting to gain some strength in size also as we head into this weekend's forecast. forecast, so I want to dive into that first. I'm going to head over to the map and show you two things going on. First off, the thunderstorms that we're gearing up for right around the corner if it decides to pull up. And if Billy, behind the scenes, if you don't mind, it'd be awesome if you'd be able to maybe push that button. In the meantime, we'll take a look behind me and I'll kind of time this system out for you. Here's our travel forecast as we head into this afternoon. Atlanta topping off in the 80s. We're gearing up for some active weather there. Across Texas, we're going to see a similar trend with warm temperatures down to the south throughout this Memorial Day weekend and cool below average temperatures just to the northeast. Here's that storm system that I want to show you, though, gaining some strength as we head into our Saturday early morning hours, pushing across the exact same states that dealt with this earlier this week. We're talking about Arkansas all the way over into Missouri and pushing across the Mississippi over into states like Kentucky and Tennessee. This is going to gain some strength into our Saturday morning forecast as many people are waking up into their Memorial Day weekend. We catch a break for a bit, but then we gain some more strength in those storm systems as we head into Sunday morning. That becomes a little bit more widespread, so the severe weather could impact millions of people. We're talking about states like northern Texas, all of Oklahoma and Kansas as we head into this afternoon with a chance of hail, lightning, and of course we could also see damaging winds too. We're not too concerned about tornado activity as much right now, but we continue to take a look at tomorrow and all the way into our Sunday forecast. These exact same areas will continue to see on and off thunderstorms heading into this Memorial Day weekend. We'll keep a very close eye on that as we head into the coming days. Liz, it has been a very active system, though, that we've been dealing with all week long, and we're not done just yet. Heading into this weekend, this could even cause some issues at local airports, and of course, delays are possible. Be careful out there on the roads, especially in those thunderstorms.
That is a great point, because so many folks are hitting the road today. Absolutely. And then also, too, Monday's always chaos, because everyone's trying to stretch out their weekend as long as possible, so everybody's coming home same day. Jess, thanks so much. All right, I got to show you this. A man in Norway woke up to find a huge container ship. Look at that. Had run aground dangerously close to his front doorstep. This happened yesterday in central Norway. The 443-foot long ship sailed right up onto shore just a few feet from his house. He actually slept through the whole thing and only found out after his panicked neighbor alerted him. Hey, buddy, you got a, ship on your front doorstep. No word yet on why it happened. Thankfully, none of the crew members were injured, and there are plans to remove the ship, but the homeowner says for now he will have to live with a very bulky new neighbor. That's a pretty good attitude to have. All right, much more ahead here on CBS News 24/7. The market's reacting after President Donald Trump threatens more tariffs against the EU and Apple. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Lindsay Reiser's next.